We passed it twice in the House the last 2 years. We almost had it done on the omnibus last year, but we just couldn't get it across the finish line. So we're trying again this year.
Is it your friends over in the Senate not meeting you halfway?
Well, we sent it over to them and they just didn't get it passed. They didn't get it put on the omnibus, or they didn't get it passed individually. I think if it comes up on the Senate floor, there's enough votes to pass it. So we'll see.
We will see. And that's just part of the interview we showed you yesterday about the worst kept secret in Idaho's ag industry. The vast majority of workers are foreign born. And when it comes to Idaho's dairy industry, well, that vast majority becomes a virtual entirety. 90% of workers come from outside this country, according to Idaho's Dairymen Association. Without a year-round work visa program, it's no secret that most of these jobs are filled by undocumented immigrants, which is why Idaho Congressman Mike Simpson is trying to push through legislation to reform the farm worker visa program. He wants to account for the workers that are already here and have a way to keep track of the workers that will inevitably come in the future. The stories we shared yesterday prompted a lot of feedback from you, our viewers, like this one from Carmen. We need to take better care of our farm workers. I would happily pay more for milk and produce if it meant the money would help ensure basic human rights, not line some CEOs' pockets. Thanks for covering this, she said. To solve the problem, Kelly suggests putting 3 dairy farmers, 3 restaurant owners, and 3 dirt farmers in a room for 5 days, and they would come up with a U.S. policy that would work. No way the Republicans and Democrats solve this, she says. And there was this question from Steve. So if the House has twice passed the Farm Workforce Modernization Act bill, why hasn't the Senate put it up for a vote? And Anna, she asked the same thing. Why haven't Crapo and Risch helped to get Simpson's bill passed in the Senate? Which brings us back to Congressman Simpson interview we just showed you. The Farm Worker Modernization Act has passed the House twice, yes, in 2019 and 2021. Yet it's gone nowhere in the Senate. They've never even voted on it, which also brings us back to Andrew Bartline, who covered for us yesterday. So I guess the question is this true? Is Congressman Simpson working alone on this?
Not necessarily, and he certainly has some help from the rest of his congressional delegation here in Idaho, Brian. And when we spoke with him, he says, well, when we spoke with him, it was because, I should say, he's been the most vocal about this issue amongst the delegation. So he sort of served as a spokesperson for sorts in that initial story. It's part of a larger bipartisan group that is pushing this forward, and it's highlighted this year by a team of 10 representatives who introduced this bill, reintroduced it again for the 3rd time. There's 4 Republicans and 6 Democrats that come from Washington, Idaho, California, New York, and Texas. So it goes coast to coast. But once this passed the House most recently in 21, it stalled almost immediately because that same bipartisan success they had in the House, or at least a compromise, they couldn't replicate that over in the Senate. File through an Idaho field and find clear-cut work that needs to be done.
This issue is a great example of how democracy can be messy.
Messy, especially around the white collars, and a notable lack of rolled-up sleeves. Rick Nairbouts. He's tracked the backroom banner from the beginning.
A very bipartisan effort.
Bidding on behalf of the Idaho Dairymen's Association. Whose responsibility was it to move this once it was the Senate's job, and why did it ultimately not move?
We had Senator Crapo take the lead as a Republican negotiator, working with his Democratic counterpart, Senator Bennett from Colorado. And so the two of them worked in earnest to try and negotiate a bill, but Senator Crapo did not feel that what they had could be brought to the Senate floor and have found 60 votes at the time.
Nairbout says that relationship is where a potential compromise began to break down. On one side, dairy owners were willing to register all future workers through E-Verify, a program that effectively ensures no undocumented workers can slip through the cracks. In return, they asked for a visa program that would ensure a steady supply of workers to fill those job openings.
And really the major sticking point was number of visas. You had Senator Crapo, who's a very conservative Republican, advocating that, hey, my farmers in my district, the dairymen, the farmers I represent, they need more visas to make sure that they have enough workers to fill the jobs available. There's a tremendous amount of irony in that you had a conservative Republican saying, we need some more visas here, and the Democrats saying, nah, sorry, I don't think we can go along with that.
If I was a betting man, I would almost flip those. That doesn't sound like that fits correctly in my head. So why is it that way?
So if you're United Farm Workers Union, you realize that all these workers that are going to come in on this H-2A visa, they don't need to be dues paying members of their union because those issues are all addressed in the visa. And what's played out in this is United Farm Workers Union definitely had the ear of Senator Bennett.
A push to limit visas pushed the negotiation to its limit. But the deeper problem between labor and production doesn't have the same luxury to crumble. But did it feel that there's a window that's almost closing a little bit?
I mean, honestly, it's felt like the window's been closed the entirety of this Congress.
Closed for business, with work still left to be done.
Over the next decade, the decision we're going to have to make as a state and as a country is, do we want to import the workers or do we want to import our food? And that very much is a national security conversation, because as soon as you become dependent upon another country to feed your own population, then you've got risk when it comes to national security.
While the bill has been reintroduced this year, it hasn't moved in the House either. Again, saying he feels like that window's been closed this whole session. The Idaho Dairymen's Association says the makeup of Congress going forward plays a large role in that, and if this kind of legislation is going to get support. Brian, it seems that a more moderate Republican seems to be someone that they would find success with getting yes votes on it. But again, it has been bipartisan efforts, needing Democrats as well to side with them and decide this is something we like to see. Again, 6 Democrats, 4 Republicans introducing it, so it is bipartisan by nature.
But what he's saying is, in essence, a union has killed this bill so far.
That's what he says. The Idaho Dairymen's Association, their understanding is that the Democrat that was supposed to work with Crapo was more interested in limiting visas because there's a union that's in his ear saying, we don't get H-2A workers in our union because they're covered by the H-2A bill, saying that they need housing, they need homes with lights and water, and that's supplied through the bill, through the employer. So the union for H-2A workers, they don't need them.
You can see why the dairy farmer you spoke with yesterday is like, I'm tired of the rhetoric. Let's just do something on this, and right now it is not. Don't go anywhere, because we got a lot of comments and questions that we didn't have a chance to share or answer yesterday. So we're going to take on some of those right now. Some of those you're going to have to help us with here, Andrew. Dan in Boise texted in, one season without these farm workers, and I'll bet some politicians would sing a different song. Chris in Meridian added to the conversation, saying, I grew up in Emmett and am well aware of how valuable they are in bringing food to our communities. I am always frustrated by people's prejudices against them, as in the migrant farm workers, and perplexed by our local politicians' inability or unwillingness to fix the immigration and workforce issues. John pointed out, it isn't just an ag job that rely on foreign-born workers. American workers don't show up in food manufacturing and others related to agriculture. I mean, have you checked out the kitchen of your favorite local restaurant lately? George adds, I'll hand this one over to you, Andrew, because this is a question you might have to deal with. Simpson cannot pass a law that violates existing law. You cannot make illegals documented citizens. And he's saying, Mike is saying that's the federal law. George is saying that. Actually.
I got bad news for you, Mike. That's the job of a federal lawmaker, is to create new laws. And if a new law is never made, then the law is like written in stone, right? But we know that's not how it works. Our law is a living document. You can look at something like Roe versus Wade, right? Well, it would be, you can't strike that down, right? That's law. Well, a court decided, no, it's not. This is now the new law. So with the lawmakers themselves, they can make new laws and say this is how it works.
Changing with the times and quarterly and all that.
Things can always change. They're always living documents.
Exactly. So he's not just trying to do this all on his own, by the way. Rhonda in Star, let's go for this one more here. Rhonda in Star says she works in a food bank where many of the workers come in for food and their families. She says they don't make enough money to buy food and they stay in shelter. She tells the story of one family who was only offered a beat-up trailer to live, they was offered this by a farmer, by the way. And this trailer had no water or no electricity. So the question to you, Andrew, would conditions like this be allowed under this updated H-2A program?
Yeah, so if they did put this H-2A reform through, people who are already living here, who are undocumented workers, they could be gathered into this, and the idea is to gather them into it. And if they are an H-2A worker, well, at that point, then the housing is provided to them by their employer. It gets inspected regularly by the federal government. Plumbing, water, heating and cooling. I mean, there are very strict regulations. I mean, it has to be up to code. You need smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, first aid kits. And so these undocumented workers being taken advantage of in a situation like that, well, this reform would prevent that from happening.
Okay, so here we sit, still waiting for that to happen because, well, we're still waiting for something else to happen in the House of Representatives. Thank you, Andrew. So what